different options open up, not only in OTT and connected TV, but also across the social platforms, which seem to be, have just pick your model as they change and open new things from Instagram TV to Facebook Watch to all of the weird stuff that Twitter is starting to do. And at the same time, we're also seeing a number, in the last couple of years, a number of direct-to-consumer brands that have in many ways built brands on digital video and storytelling, not only driving both performance but also brand building. So a whole host of interesting topics that we wanted to engage today. And to do so, we have an old friend of ours, George Leon, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at HawthorneDirect. In fact, at HawthorneDirect, he oversees the brand response TV practice, as well as heading up data science there. Hawthorne works with brands like Equifax, Brother, and 3M. Please welcome back George Leon.
Thank you, Steve. So, thank you, panel members, everyone here. This is a subject that I don't know how you can actually encapsulate in 30 minutes. So we're going to try to do this. As a matter of fact, we had a preview of this discussion about a week and a half ago, and it took a lot longer than 45 minutes. So we'll cover it from there. So anyway, it's the subject here. It's like I'm just going to ask the panel members here just do a quick introduction and just a little bio on who they are. The interesting thing about this panel is a combination of agencies and also from the brand side. It will allow us to give a different perspective across video content and how we utilize it from the agency and from the marketer side. So, Benton.
Hi, I'm Benton Crane with Harmon Brothers. We're a little boutique agency out of Provo, Utah. Most people know us as a viral video agency, but that's actually not the truth. Virality is kind of it's like catching lightning in a bottle, and we've been lucky enough to do that a few times. But the reality of what we do is we take the world of traditional branding and we melt that with the world of direct response. And we've had several really big successes, starting with Poopery and then Squatty Potty and Purple and Chatbooks and several others as well.
Shannon.
I'm Shannon Marcotte. I'm the Director of Performance Marketing at Sunbasket, which is the #1 meal kit in healthy choices. And I lead our performance marketing team, overseeing all marketing channels that drive new user acquisition for us.
My name is Patel. I head up the media offering at McKinney. We're a full-service agency based out of Durham, North Carolina, and also have a smaller office in New York. We work with a range of brands, brands like CarMax, Sherwin-Williams, Crocs, Marpac, S&P Global. So it's a wide variety of clients across a range of industries.
Terrific. I'm actually going to start with you, Benton. It's like because one of the things when we spoke of in our meeting, we talked about that brand Potpourri. And it's certainly one that I recall very well. I don't know if anyone here has ever seen that the creative for it. Anyone? Okay. So what was unique about that is like you really wanted to be a disruptor, and you really wanted to, as you pointed out in our call, make a conversation that's uncomfortable comfortable. So how did you come into that the decision to make that part of the storytelling? It's like around that brand, and how do you do that for all your other brands?
So kind of our working thesis is that in today's day and age, the best creative is the creative that people actually want to interact with, that they want to watch, they want to consume. And so if we can make ads that they still perform, they still sell, but they're so engaging and so entertaining that people actually want to engage with them, that's kind of been the key to our success. And with something like Poopery, which is, it's a phenomenal product, but it's such an awkward topic that, you know, they had a passionate customer base before we came along, but it was the type of customer base that would put the product in the master bathroom, right? So they didn't have to talk to their friends about it, because it's an embarrassing conversation. And so we knew that if we were going to find success with that, we had to figure out a way to make it safe to have that conversation so that people could put it in the guest bathroom, right? And put it front and center. And so the working theory was that if we could take the last person on earth who would have that conversation, who would say those crass things and make it okay for her, then it would be okay for you and I. And that's why we cast a proper British woman, you know, someone who you would expect to see at, you know, like an aristocratic tea party or something like that. And we put her on a toilet pitching this spray and talking about poo stink, right? All of a sudden, it makes it okay for you and I to have that same awkward conversation. We can even, you know, talk about it over dinner, and it became safe, and that was our tactic with that.
Terrific. We go from one extreme, we go to another brand here. It's like I want to see if Swab, you can speak a little bit about Sherwin-Williams, a very traditional brand. You have had to come up with new ways to tell the story of Sherwin-Williams, and it's like the emotion that you get, it's like from the impact that it has on your home, your life, and so forth. What kind of research did you do? It's like as it related to Sherwin-Williams, the type of content you wanted to provide, and what devices did you align yourself with to tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, Sherwin's 150-year-old paint brand. It's the nation's largest, actually maybe the world's largest paint retailer. Has a really strong association with people that are older, and one of the challenges we're trying to get the brand to be more relevant to younger audiences. But a common thing we say at the agency is people don't care about brands, they care more about themselves. And so what we have to do is find a way to connect with what people actually care about. And so in this world, it's not necessarily about finding white space, but what people come to the category for is color. And the reason they want color is to transform their space, whether it's a nursery or some other part of their home. They want to transform it into a beautiful world of color. And so a lot of the video assets we've made that are most upper funnel are painting beautiful worlds of color out of the actual paint chips that are in store. And despite the fact that you can take a paint chip from one store to another and get it matched, our research found that people were more likely to have a propensity to stick with the brand that they actually had the physical paint chip for. So we've translated that and used it as a creative mechanism in all of the video assets. And so we've got, you know, brand assets at the very high level to how-to videos, you know, more when people are further down the funnel.
Right. And from the perspective of measurement, it's like how do you measure? It's like those respective channels and devices.
Yeah, I mean, I think the conversation around measurement is a really interesting one. One of a lot of the people I've talked to in individual conversations is this topic of empowering your agency personnel to have conversations about measurement with the clients versus just taking directives is a really important one. I've worked with our studio department to design a half hare, half tortoise image with a sign that just says, slow down to go fast. And it's really trying to empower our teams to talk with the clients about what are the objectives we're trying to measure, what are the right KPIs for those, and then are we following them from, you know, the top all the way down. So in the world of video, views are a very common upper funnel metric, same as VCR, but is a 3-second view of a 30-second spot or whatever, you know, form the video is that the right KPI that we should be looking at? Or is there something else? And how do we, you know, we've all probably been in this space, clients and agency people alike, where we say, we generated 10 million views, and it's a good number to merchandise internally, so we kind of get stuck on using that as like the metric to fall back on. But is that what is really important, or is there something else we should be looking to track from a measurement standpoint? But we just really need to have the conversations up front before we, you know, align on what to do afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And Shannon, you're on the brand side, and you're in the competitive landscape. Mm-hmm. It's like Sunbasket is out there. It's like with Blue Apron, Plated, and others like that. It's like when you're developing that story, it's like the storytelling. It's like behind who you're targeting, and it's like you have a really broad spectrum of customer. How do you align your story so that it stands out?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, our biggest challenge is that although we're definitely highest quality, you know, we're a premium brand and particularly premium within the meal kit space, but we have lower brand awareness than our competitors like Blue Apron and HelloFresh and Home Chef. And basically, we can't win on price point. We don't want to win on price point because our quality is so much higher than them. So what we need to do is make sure that in all of our assets, we're really telling the story about what sets us apart. So, you know, we're all organic produce. We have more healthy meal plan choices than anyone else in the space. We have premium proteins. Everything is, all of our fish, for example, is wild caught. And so video is a great place for us to play because it allows us to very quickly tell those stories, but also help people understand, too, that this can not only help them make healthy choices, but can also simplify their lives and help them get dinner on the table faster. Most of our menu options also take less than 20 minutes for you to cook at home. So a lot of our assets are really punchy, and it's really showing how simple it is, and 3 easy steps to getting a beautiful meal on your table.
As a follow-up to that, can you share who are your target customers, and how do you drive that message to maybe a urban dweller?
Yeah.
And also maybe a family of 4?
Sure. So we tend to actually really focus in on people who are in their late 20s to early 40s, and then empty nesters. So we find that although we do offer family plans, the value isn't there as much. We really are focused heavily on people who are either don't have children in the household, or who have young children and they're still feeding themselves separately from their kids. I think new moms is a category where we've developed a lot of assets too, because we do have the ability to customize. There's a lot of plans that allow you to avoid certain food products, essentially, that you might be trying to avoid at that phase in your life. And so we try to tell those stories about how we can help you kind of not only provide health to you, but also your family.
Okay. And Benton, with your brands, you're constantly looking at that direct impulse, that impulse response, or even the tail response. How do you utilize, or how do you look at video when you're talking to your clients, as far as driving that immediate response versus that brand awareness that you need to build as well? You have a lot of campaigns that are also retail driving, so you want to make sure that you drive that awareness to that. So what's your recommendation generally to clients?
Great question. So with a client like Purple Mattresses, for instance, who's doing all of their sales online, right? They need to get an immediate return on every transaction. Whereas a client like FiberFix, which is it's a fiberglass repair tape that's sold in 30,000 stores across the country. Everything from auto parts stores to to Home Depot, Lowe's, et cetera, et cetera. They don't need to get that immediate ROI on their ad spend, and so they can operate at a much lower immediate ROI than say a Purple. And so generally we try to set up guardrails that are we call them guardrails for the campaign that are appropriate for that client. And so Purple, for instance, I can't share actual numbers, right? But for the sake of an example, a guardrail could be, they need to get a 3 ROI on their ad spend, and as long as we're reaching that, then we can spend as aggressively as possible, as long as we're staying within that constraint. Right. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. So I think Evan mentioned earlier that he had no control over the creative. I don't know where is he right now, but there you are. Swap, from your perspective on the agency side, it's how do you align the messaging and the storytelling? It's like with creative and then the media that ultimately is going to be the delivery or the device that you're going to be using.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think with video, it's a bit more challenging than with a lot of the other assets that we produce. So for a client like Crocs, there's a lot of learnings that we're getting from their DMP, which is Adobe. One simple example is that we're learning that people that are advocates of Crocs, that are going to buy the brand, don't necessarily need couponing to purchase the product. So we're serving them a different message versus others that are new to the brand may need an incentive, and so the messaging that they're getting served is going to be offer driven, right? But beyond that, there's also, I mean, how many of you guys are familiar with the classic clog from Crocs? Most people, it's got 65% aided awareness across the world, and it's only a 16-year-old brand. The problem is, half of you or more probably dislike the brand because of that product, right? The reality is they make dozens of other lines of products, from heels and wedges and flats, that you may be open to, that if you're not aware of, you'll never consider the brand. So if we can understand that there's a segment of the world that may be open to this, because the sandals market is huge, way more than the clog market, but we're just not serving these people the right message, then we're never going to have a chance to convert them. So we obviously need to understand that audience first, what their likes are and what their dislikes are, and then serve up the right message. And then there's also other variables you can toggle, and DCO can help play a role in that, like the weather and the appropriate product to show when it's raining versus on a sunny day and things like that. So right now I think we probably have 15,000 creative variants in market across 6,000 placements, and it's sort of doing the job of serving the right message to the right person at the right time.
And is data driving that creative messaging?
Yeah.
In summary, okay. And then Shannon, from your at Sunbasket, you're utilizing a lot of Facebook as
A lot
well,
of
and it's like,
Facebook,
and so can you share with us? It's like, how do you mix and match the creative? It's like to the different segments within there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, our approach is definitely iterate, iterate, iterate. So we have an in-house team that's producing at least 4 new concepts every single week for us for videos, which is awesome. I mean, that's a huge toolkit that I certainly have never had the luxury of having in my previous roles. But everything that we go to market with, we have at least 2 variations so that we can start to test what's really hitting. And it can be simple things like where we're placing our logo, persistent or at the front or at the back, or promo placement, starting with a question versus starting with a statement, those kinds of things. And then as we're getting the insights in real time, we're queuing up that next deployment to make sure that we're hitting on those insights. So for example, we know that a lot of people come to us with, they select a specific meal plan. So for example, someone might select vegan, but they're really using vegan as a proxy for what they perceive healthy to be. Like, oh, I'm gonna go hardcore and get this vegan menu and change my whole life, and it's gonna be incredible. But they're actually selecting more menus out of the paleo plan. And so that tells us, it's like, okay, well, how can we make it really clear that whatever your objective is, Sunbasket can help you achieve that. So another example is that we have a lot of people who are opting into the gluten-free plan. Well, it's not necessarily that they have celiacs. We actually don't recommend the plan for people with celiacs because our packaging is in facilities that does contain gluten. But regardless, the gluten-free plan, we have it's a lot of people who are trying to eat carb smart. So we produced an asset that talked about how, with our paleo or our gluten-free plans, you can eat carb smart, and that's a proxy for healthy for most people. And it's something that's achievable and easily comprehensible.
Thank you.
George, do you mind if I comment on how data informs creative?
Absolutely, because I was about to get into the do the math part. So
Sorry for cutting you off.
Okay.
A lot of our campaigns are kind of long format style. We've even had one as long as 12 minutes. And what we found is that no matter the length of an ad, if the rhythm's not right and it's not engaging you, it's going to feel long. But if you nail the rhythm, then it doesn't matter the length. People are going to engage, and the time will pass without them even realizing that they've sat there through a 5-minute ad. And so one of the tools that we found very, very effective to make sure that we have the rhythm right is to look at viewer retention curves and see how people are dropping off as they're watching the video. And what we want to see is as flat as possible and as smooth as possible. And whenever we see a little bump in that viewer retention curve, it's an indication that something's wrong with the rhythm at that point in the creative. And so that allows us to go back and diagnose it and find out what is it that's causing the rhythm to get jarred at that point and causing people to fall away. And so that's one way that we can use data to inform the creative to make sure that we're nailing that rhythm and keeping people engaged throughout.
Yeah. No, and that's also something, it's like at Hawthorne looking at that data for that first-party data and then aligning it to third-party data and identifying just the alignment, whether it's going to retail of that propensity to go to a Walmart or a Target or a Kohl's and so forth, will drive that creative conversation as well. So it's not just product, but ultimately it's like that ultimate delivery system in which you're going to use to be able to consume that engagement and acquisition. So having said that, Swap, from the perspective of agency, what are you sharing with your clients as far as the limitations of data coming up to help inform your creative? In other words, it's like some of the privacy issues that are coming up. It's like, how will that impact potentially, it's like from your perspective, what that video content will be? It's like, or how off are we going to be?
I mean, I think the thing that comes to mind is there's a sister agency that we just sat through their presentation last week. It's called Blackwood 7. They're more of a media mix modeling company that doesn't rely on user data, and there's a lot of value in user data, but if we can look at other approaches to inform what's working and what's not, and sort of triangulate, I think that's one way to mitigate risk versus just saying everything that's being shaped by things like GDPR is going to be crippling as to what we do moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're seeing that we have to stay ahead of the curve. It's like, in particular, it's like in some of the data that we look at and make sure that the data is scrubbed properly to be able to inform some of that. A lot of the data sets out there, it's like you just don't know the quality behind it, so we want to make sure that we always have that in perspective when looking at the creative content as well. So, Shannon, with regards to creative and upcoming creative, it's like, how much do you look at creative from the perspective of programmatic, or how different is it from linear TV? You haven't done very much of that at all.
Yeah, we haven't really done much TV. We're going to be kicking off some testing in Q1, but. And
how much different will that be? It's like from your perspective to what you're doing on digital channels.
Honestly, I don't think it's that different. Obviously, we're a lot more highly targeted in the digital channels. We tend to actually create for digital first and then iterate for other channels. So most of our assets are under 15 seconds. So we tend to kind of take an opposite approach to more traditional players in terms of the development of those assets. So really fast, really punchy, quick. But we'll see, I think it's again going to be, test and learn approach.
Benton, from your perspective, it's testing-wise, digital first, linear?
Yeah, we've had several clients who we start out digital and we hone the messaging. We go through lots of variation testing, both in the video world where we can test several different intros to a video. We can test calls to action, different offers, and we can mix and match those pieces to kind of hone in on the perfect recipe. And then you apply that same methodology to, to everything else from the landing page on down, banners, the whole works, and you can take all of those learnings and then apply them to other channels like TV, radio, print, etc., because you have all of those learnings from digital.
Yeah, and we have found in doing that we find a high correlation of success, particularly when we're testing on Facebook. It's like that correlation does carry over into linear channels as well. So, Swap, from the perspective of aligning the creative across all the different channels and devices, how do you measure the responsiveness of that creative across all of those channels?
So I think it starts with the measurement plan. So if you look at a brand like Sherwin, video is often one of the first impressions from a sequential messaging standpoint, but it's also the type of video. It's more of that brand message. I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen the Safari spot. You can Google it. It's just a beautiful world of color. It's a Safari coming to life. It doesn't mention paint anywhere in the commercial, but that's like one of the first impressions. And then as people are further down the funnel, we are looking at other metrics that are helping them, whether it's time spent, because it's a how-to video, and we've partnered with a HGTV or an apartment therapy or different publishers to create a series of video assets that are meant to play a role in a certain phase of the process. And then obviously there's sale messaging, which if you're trying to convert someone that's shown intent to buy paint and they're in the moment, there's 30% off or 40% off messaging that's served up at the right time and place to that subset of people that are interested. And the other thing we do is we've got we use, like Jeremy was talking about, the value of a dashboard and having clients look at one place and having that facilitate conversations. I mean, I think that we get pitched dashboards from lots of individual media partners, but the value of creating one where clients are looking at the KPIs you've agreed upon, from upper funnel metrics all the way down to cost per transaction and revenue generated metrics by channel and property and places that you're running, that's a really helpful tool for us to facilitate the conversations around what should we do differently than we are currently.
And you're breaking this down by creative as well?
We do cut it by creative as well in certain cases.
Okay. And then Shannon, from the perspective of your brand, where do you see it's like that messaging, it's like going, it's like in the next few years, it's like as we start to see that convergence of it's like connected TV and other channels, it's like along with the linear and digital channels?
Yeah, so I mean, I think right now we're in hyper-growth mode, so it's heavily, heavily, heavily performance-driven and very little brand work, and I think we'll really evolve in that direction. We're already starting to kind of create the foundation for creating those top-of-funnel KPIs. It's tricky, though. I mean, you become addicted to seeing the direct conversions, and so when you're launching these campaigns, the intent is not to drive a direct conversion, it's to drive awareness, it's to increase your brand search impressions, so on and so forth. It's hard to really be disciplined and allow yourself and your team to make that investment, because we know that's actually going to be the thing that sustains our growth over time. But you really have to train all of the stakeholders to really get on board with those different set of KPIs.
Right. And Ben, that's probably something that from the perspective of direct to brand, you have to set the expectations with your clients. How do you communicate that to them?
So it's kind of just like Shannon was talking about. Most of our clients are pretty early stage, and so they kind of go through this maturation process where in the beginning they're focused on, they want that direct ROI. They need that immediately, but we have to help them see that that's not going to last forever, and their growth trajectory is going to put them on a path where they need to be thinking about branding. And so they need to lay that foundation early so that as they reach the stage where some of the focus starts to shift over to branding, the groundwork has already been laid. And so as we build our campaigns, we try to build brand characters, brand images that become the foundation for those branding efforts that come later.
Yeah, and that's also been our experience. It's like from the perspective of build a business, then build a brand. And as a result of that, just making sure that the creative is also maturing just as the brand does. But it also becomes tougher because you're then taking what originally is a longer creative up front to build the awareness and to educate, and then you have to start to shrink that messaging down to just the right messaging and make sure that it matches the right platform and device. So is that the challenge that you've seen as well?
Yeah, we're seeing more and more that a portfolio of content is so much stronger than a single campaign, and the bigger that portfolio grows, the stronger the campaign around it becomes. And so you can have anything from 5-second looping videos at the top of the funnel to 15, 30-second, 60-second cuts, and all sorts of variations around them that are driving people to, maybe the landing page has the long format video where people get the whole entire message, the whole entire story. But when you have all of those assets working together, and you can test different sequencing, that's when the portfolio approach gets really powerful.
Well, good. Any questions?
So Jody and I were just talking about this before this panel, that sometimes we have a little self-loathing because we've taught our clients to be so DR focused over the past 100 years of the internet, that whenever we want to talk about brand or awareness, measures and everything else, like our clients, the ones who used to never believe in direct response, now won't believe in doing what they've done forever. And so how have you, Shannon, you touched on it a little bit, I believe you did as well, Brenton, that how do you start talking about awareness tactics, or I guess I like to think of it as prospecting tactics, right? Because you're still pixeling, you're still reaching audiences, you're not necessarily going out to the world, you're still using targeting, but you're going up much higher than some of these other tactics. How do you tell a story internally, strategically, and what's worked, where they finally get a clear picture of like, oh, of course we have to do that. That makes the next logical sense. Because I'll tell you what, that is not easy, has not been easy for us.
Yeah, I think for us, really where we've started is like start small. So, okay, we know that our search program is really important to us. By doing this, this is the impact you can see to that channel that you already love and want to invest more in. So that's always an easy place to start. I think before Sunbasket, I was at the New York Times, and we just ran our first brand campaign in like 25 or 30 years. And people were really scared about it going into it. And the Truth is Hard campaign now has really exploded. Like, literally, there are people wearing The Truth is Hard on runways in Paris. And so now they're like all in. So I think it's really about like starting really small and showing those incremental wins. I think we're all so data-centric and really addicted to that data. So taking that approach versus a more like, this is good for you in the long run, and we won't know how to proceed until we do it, you know? And I think it's also starting to understand too, okay, well, on the DR side, we know it's like 7-day window, like super tight. What is actually that consideration window for someone who has no awareness of us at all? We have some assumptions, but you have to actually run the campaign to really start to see that true life cycle. And I think the other piece too is that more brand will also bring in more qualified users, so we'll ultimately have a great impact on retention, hopefully, if you did your job well.
The thing we found useful on that front is journey mapping and outlining all the phases of the process. And a former client of ours was Travelocity, and when you outline the phases of a consumer journey on trip planning, 90% of the dollars are spent in the buying phase, trying to get you at the moment of purchase. But we also overlaid a happiness kind of scale on that, and that's also the place where there was the least happiness. People are excited about planning their trip, initiating that process. Then it drops down into this, I gotta spend money and do this thing, and then they're happy going on the trip, and then afterwards, right? And so when we created the Roaming Gnome, it was really about marketing outside of that moment of the cheap ticket business and taking them into the business of great travel experiences, right? And so if the clients are broad, their perspective is broadened a little about how the consumer is going through this process, and you put them at the center of that process, and then you ideate against that, you have a better chance of doing more things than just, you know, the thing that you need to do today. Of course, you need to, you know, sell hotel rooms or shoes or paint or whatever it is, because that's how you keep the lights on. But how do you not squeeze the funnel dry?
One other thing on that point too is, you know, the platforms are all getting so expensive. I mean, Facebook CPMs are up like 90% year over year. It's really insane. But really strong creative can help you kind of get ahead of that. So if you're evolving your creative messaging faster, then prices are rising and you're improving your click-through rates and conversion rates at a rate that's greater. Like, it's a great way to actually combat those rising costs. And that's something that, you know, that's an easy story to tell to your CEO or whoever is kind of holding the purse strings.
Hi, it's Rob Jason from USIM. Similar kind of question about testing. So video testing, do you have a structure when you want to find video that's working at multi-levels, that's working at a kind of branding level as well as hopefully you know, somewhat of a conversion level? How do you then go about testing that? Have you come up with strategies that are more effective in the marketplace to figure out whether video is going to, which video creative is going to work better?
So to answer that question, I want to back up just a little bit. And for us, we don't think of branding and direct as either or. We think of them as a blended world, one in the same. And so for instance, in the same way that I would tell our creative team, sales first, art second, but the art is a very close second, I would say to our data team, brand first, data second, but data is a very close second, because I'm trying to take both of those worlds and bring them together, right? And so to answer your question about how do we test data in terms of does it work for direct and branding, we always build so that it will work for both direct and branding. That's like core to our DNA.
One against the other. Do you have a method of an approach, some way of effectively testing whether it's going to work or not before you go out and run it?
Sure, so before anything goes live, we'll test titles, A/B test all the titles, we'll A/B test all the thumbnail images, we'll A/B test all of the intros. And so for intros, we're looking for view-through rates, right? And so that lets us test the front end of the video. We used to actually try to go live with full videos and test A, B, C, D, and E, but our stuff has gotten popular enough that now the press will want to pick one of those up, and bloggers and everyone wants to write about it. And so we have to go live with one version, and then after it kind of gets the whole, it runs the rounds with the press, then we can go back and then we can test full versions against each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Shannon, since you mentioned the price of Facebook going up, I'm curious, sort of want to do a quick channel check of some of the emerging, if there are any emerging video channels that you find, any of you find promising as alternatives to the mainstays.
I can start. It's like I see it's Facebook. It's like we're utilizing a lot of prospecting video, but also I see a lot of connected video, connected TV video, and it's like that particular platform as being one that is really helping us do some A/B testing on those as well. It's like to identify those individual, the responsiveness, it's like to those individual households. But that's generally where we're a new channel for us to be testing.
You're missing the interactive layer there, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, but it's more the responsiveness and the click-through, and it's like what we're seeing. It's like overall as a response lift for the campaign.
One of our clients, Dry Bar Comedy, they do stand-up comedy that's clean comedy. It's for families. And they launched about 18 months ago, and we helped them build a Facebook Watch strategy where they release little snippets of their content daily on Facebook Watch. And they are up to 120 million organic views per month on Facebook Watch. I think that as the Facebook video world has gotten more and more expensive, it appears that part of what's driving that, at least from our perspective, is that a share on Facebook in 2016 was a much more valuable share than a share is today. Meaning when you share something, you're reaching a larger percentage of your network back in 2016 than you do today. That's not the case on Facebook Watch. A share on Facebook Watch is a very, very valuable share. I don't know, the details behind Facebook's black box, but it's very apparent that they are building their algorithm to favor Facebook Watch right now. And so I think that's it's a platform full of lots of opportunity right now.
Similarly, Instagram Stories is another placement that hasn't seen as high of an increase in costs. We're also doing some testing on TrueView for performance and seeing really strong early results there. That one's a little scary because by the nature of how they do their optimizations, your first week of performance is like literally all over the map, and you start to see some really, really frightening cost per order numbers. But if you can be strong and hold through in week 2 and week 3, we've actually seen really strong success.
Yeah, I think similarly. I mean, we've done a little bit of dabbling in Snapchat as well, and I think it's just trying to find the mix of why you're using which platform for what purpose. Like, there's another client, Marcotte, where we did a 4-hour live event on Facebook, and that was a completely different approach than using, some of the product type ads via like carousel and whatnot for a different retailer like Crocs.
George, panel, thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to have a video panel at the end of the morning. In fact, one of our attendees from TiVo is